Guys, the moment is finally here. You've been waiting for this for so long since I initially announced that I was going to be doing an engine swap. The time has finally come to reveal the car that we're swapping it into. This is super unique. I'm super excited to help Matt out with it. Without further ado, here it is. So guys, this is the motor that is currently in this car, which I guess I haven't talked about yet. It's a 67 Sunbeam Alpine, British sports car heritage. You guys who play Forza might know the Sunbeam Tiger. Well, this is a Tiger with not a V8, so that doesn't matter obviously since we're swapping it anyway. But the motor that's in it right now is out of a Datsun 510, or it's like a crate motor that's similar to the motor that was in the 510. This is a swap motor. This is not the motor it came with originally. So we're pulling this out. As you guys can see, there's all sorts of interesting wiring that the previous swapper did. You want to talk really quick about what you did to find this car?
Yeah. Sunbeam Tiger is the first version of this car that I saw, and my wife and I were at a car show once, and I had already loved the Sunbeam Tiger. I got to go for a ride in one. My boss at the time's brother had one, and he had done a really good job of putting it together nicely. And with the V8, I think he'd built it to be quite powerful. Maybe I'll talk to him about more of the specifics, but just really loved the way that it felt. It felt like a driver's car in the purest form. And anyway, later on at a car show, I hadn't told my wife about this Sunbeam that I've enjoyed. It's not necessarily, I shouldn't say my favorite car, but it is now because I have one, right? So we were just looking at all the cars, and I'm a car guy, I'm a mechanic by trade, and so anyways, without me saying anything, I heard her gasp. She said, "What's that?" And I looked, and it was my buddy's Sunbeam, and I said, "Oh boy, here we go, I'm in trouble." And I said, "You like that car?" And she said, "Yes, I do. I like it a lot." So anyway, obviously she fell in love with the looks of the Tiger, and she hadn't even been in a ride in one yet. It just was the aesthetics for her, and that was enough for me. And you car guys probably know when your wife likes something aesthetically, you pay more attention to it, unless you're not into that kind of a thing. But I decided that I ought to find one. We have a really, really cool classified ads in Utah, KSL Classifieds. And just so happened, as I was typing it in one day, one popped up. And it was in my town, not more than a couple of miles away. And he just said it's been in a barn for a long time, make an offer, kind of a thing. And lo and behold, the Sunbeam Alpine came into the family. And just so many things about this car that I'm enthusiastic about. We lucked out. I mean, there's not a whole lot of rust underneath. Even where there is body damage, you can see there's not rust showing through. Two-door, hood pops up the wrong way, or the right way. The price was definitely right. We couldn't say no, and here it is.
I guess it would be good to talk about what we want to do. Obviously, I've hyped up that Beams motor that we picked up a little while ago. We're pulling this motor out, and we're going to figure out a way to shoehorn the beams in, and with that is going to come quite a few other things. Obviously, the brakes will need to be updated. Matt's thinking maybe trying to find some Miata brakes that will work. If you guys have any suggestions about that, anything I say, if you guys have any ideas, please leave them in the comments. That would mean a lot, just to have as much info as we can get. The rear axle will probably need to be changed out, depending on how much power they can take. We don't really know. Or Matt's talked about or considered a couple different ones from other solid axle cars. We do want to keep it. He wants to keep it solid axle, and obviously it's his project, not mine, so I'm just helping. But yeah, so keeping the solid axle most likely. The paint we're planning on leaving the same. Do you want to explain your justification for that? I think that you're the best.
I need justification.
Well, a lot of people are like, oh, if you're going to have a nice car, you got to have nice paint. So,
okay, fine. My justification for keeping the body the way that it is for the sake of maybe my kids, you know. I don't particularly care for the worry of having somebody nick my paint job or run into it with their bicycle, which is a possibility. I don't have kids yet, but maybe I will. And I don't care if my neighbors are around the car. I want it to be a car that people enjoy. I don't care if that's climbing over things, and you know, not that that's safe, but I don't want to have to worry. I think I want to drive this. I want to make it a daily driver. It's going to see road salt here in Utah. It's going to see all sorts of weather conditions, and the shape that it's in is already pretty good. The paint is original. I think that look, and maybe it's not original. There's probably patches where it's not original, but I think it's hard to come by doing the paint how it was done at the factory at the time, and I think there's character, and I enjoy the character. I don't necessarily enjoy rust and things that are rusted out, but I do appreciate when things are left undone and still have a charm about them.
One other thing I haven't mentioned yet is we're going to try and figure out a way to convert it to rack and pinion steering. Don't know how that's going to go. Trying to do this while cutting the subframe as little as possible. You guys probably can't see much, but we've done some measurements, and with that beams motor, that's going to be an interesting thing to figure out.
Rough measurements, but yeah, we've done a look. We've look-see-looed and seen that the beams motor is pretty fat in the front, and inherently where that lays in the car takes up more room, and it might run right into that subframe. So we may need to reconsider how we go about doing that. We won't know until we stab that thing in there, though. I think we'll get this motor out, see how big it stacks up next to the new motor. It's going to be quite a bit smaller. Maybe pull the radiator out, get as much room in the engine bay as possible, obviously take the hood off, and then slide the beams, trans, and engine in if we can all at once, and just see where things fit and where they don't. I'm willing to bet that there's quite a few places they don't. But they shoved a V8 into one of these, okay? So
yeah, that's true. The Tigers.
Chances are good that we'll be able to make it fit.
Yeah.
I want the rear end to be able to hold up during a burnout. Maybe. Leaf springs right now, so, I mean, even if I was to swap something in here and I kept the leaf springs, doing burnouts with leaf springs is a bad idea. It's been done before, and that truck probably won't feel as good to do burnouts with leaf springs in this, so we may consider doing coil conversion, control arms, 4-link, with whatever solid axle we decide to swap to, which is going to give us quite a few possibilities in range of suspension and tuning, as opposed to obviously independent being the best. But I mean, I feel like if you had to go that deep into building independent suspension, you'd lose some of the character and the enjoyment that you have in a live axle rear end on an old car like this. It would start to feel a little bit too modern.
Yeah.
I'm not that experienced with high horsepower cars, and this will be exciting to me to see what becomes of it. And making this YouTube channel is helping encourage me to collaborate with people who know more than I do, and hopefully get some insights about what to do. And I look forward to working with Dart on this. Dart B, as you guys know him on YouTube, and I look forward to whoever else wants to stop by and help. I think we'll have multiple people coming and offering a hand. This was meant to be a family project. My father-in-law actually helped me buy the car. It wasn't a bad deal that we both got, and we were going to make it a family project. I don't know how excited they are about getting dirty and working on the car, but
I am.
We'll keep it family related for sure.
Yeah. So as far as interior goes, haven't talked about that yet. Matt did mention Icon and Jonathan Ward. There we go. So he wants to keep it looking very stock. Obviously, right now it doesn't really look very stock. It looks like it's been dismantled a bit, but it's okay. He does have a factory dash. He wants to keep the factory gauges and keep it looking as factory as possible, like we said. And so we're gonna see if we can make that work. It's supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be usable. It's not supposed to be a race car.
The seats that were in it were probably out of like a 90s Ford Taurus, and they were hideous. The steering wheel didn't have its support on it, and there are lots of things missing. So most recently we've got the seats installed.
Yep.
With new seat brackets, starting to help me do that a little bit, and there's just a lot that's not there. When we got it, they weren't there to begin with, and things that have been redone. I think these door cards have been attempted to be redone. They kind of look pretty awful. Might be something we can do about that. And I don't aspire to Jonathan Ward's excellence, but I do appreciate how he's able to make interiors work, and maybe I can even collaborate with him and see what he can do about the gauges that we have. 'Cause anyway, if you watch his YouTube videos, you know what I'm talking about. If you want to go that far and end that deep.
Yep. So I think that pretty much sums up talking about what we've got. So guys, this is a factory Alpine motor. Also kind of tell dimensions wise that this is a lot smaller than the beams is. So it's going to be interesting seeing how we're going to fit that thing. But this is a significantly larger motor. So
this is a 1.7, that's a 2 liter.
Yeah, 2 liter versus a 1.7. The transmission is a 6-speed versus a 3 or 4 speed, yeah. The Nissan motor that's in there right now has a 4-speed. Who knows what this is? The shifter's not connected, so I couldn't tell you. As far as the actual hoist that we have gotten, so this thing has seen quite a transformation over the past 24 hours. Last night, Matt and I were working on this quite extensively. It's not totally done yet. He's going to make a sleeve here to make sure that this doesn't come out of that, because this is not, if you can't tell by the difference in color, the factory or the original Ram that was on this hoist. This is one that we picked up from Harbor Freight last night. You guys might see a clip of that later on. And this is where the original Ram was mounted, where we've cut and painted here. And this is where it's now mounted. So this is a modified version of the original bracket that Matt cut, drilled, welded on, and then we mounted the new Ram on it, like you guys see here, and that made it so that it actually lowered down. Before, guys, the crane was stuck at about perpendicular. So we also had to cut here. Before, this was completely perpendicular to the mounting point. Couldn't lower it at all. If we wanted to lift an engine up, it would have to be ridiculously long chains. And so we've made it safer, we've made it more powerful, we've made it stronger. Also got the scale on there so we can actually weigh stuff. It's pretty sweet. I'm really excited to keep doing cool fab stuff like this and learn tricks from Matt about welding. As you guys can see, his welds are a lot better than mine, if you remember my muffler video with my truck, so. Well, guys, after 7 years, Matt's angle grinder decided that tonight was the night to die. So,
May not have been 7 years, but right when we need everything.
I knew that would happen. We've gotten decent way between cutting this off.
Break the weld off and then move this whole unit down further to fit our new large hydraulic ram.
So that's a pretty significant difference.
HFT, baby.
Best brand there is.
Harbor Freight Tools. HFT.
Yeah. We just cut the pallet off, and now the scale is weighing in at around 380 pounds. It's fluctuating a bit as Matt's cutting off the wires that attached it to the pallet, but generally, that's the neighborhood that we're in. So, that is pretty light for an engine and transmission combo. However, the power that comes out of the beams is going to be significantly greater than this motor or the Nissan one that's currently in it.
Probably sitting at about 60 to 90 horsepower.
Yeah.
Just so that number is thrown around. Are there any cars out there right now you think that are that low on power?
The modern Peel P50s.
Oh, okay, right.
Because
that's not a car though. It's got a motor or scooter engine.
But there's people who sell them as cars at car prices.
Comment below, right? What other cars?
Yeah, new cars with less than 100 horsepower. Name them. Anyways, it probably will affect steering feel a little bit, having the extra weight in the front from the beams. Probably depends, actually, on if we get the rack and pinion to work properly, because if we can do that, then that will totally transform the steering.
Definitely probably have suspension issues. The springs are designed to hold is going to be greater, but we'll find out when we weigh the engine just how much that's going to change.
Yep.
Things to consider. Look at the length of this thing, though, versus what's going in.
This 6-speed feels so good. Whew. So now that all the wires are cut off, whatever negligible weight that was, 381.8. So moving on to bigger and better things. In theory, we could put this motor in, right? It's good, supposedly.
Yeah, and the motor that's in there right now just needs a starter.
Yeah.
That's what started this whole process. The starter motor in that car, he wanted to see it run. So I went to crank it. I turned the key, and it cranked, for like 2 seconds?
5 or 6 times.
Which is normal, because I have to prime it. You know, I don't have gas tanks in there right now, so it takes me a while to start it. Then I went to turn the key again, and it went click. And I thought, well, maybe the starter's bad, or maybe I have bad terminals. And then I go down and I look at the starter motor, and it's just completely broken off.
It cracked in half.
The whole casing. You'll see it later. But and then I was like, do I fix the starter motor? And I've been wanting to do this swap since I got the car. The starter motor started our beams project.
Yep.
So why am I weighing these motors?
You want to see how the suspension will be affected, how the weight distribution will be affected, how the dynamics of the driving will be affected.
Well, what do I have it to compare it to, right? When I do this powertrain swap, what am I going to be comparing it to? That's part of the reason. When I weigh this, I can compare it to the weight of a Miata, right?
Mm-hmm.
This engine transplant assembly, I mean, I'm going to go as far as probably when I get the motor installed and I get the car running, I'll drive the car to the scrapyard and put it on the metal scale. See how much the car weighs. I want to know what power to weight ratio I've got. What other things can you gain from knowing the weight of your car, right? You talked about springs, suspensions, how to tune your suspension. I'm not going to know what kind of weight I have on my new springs unless I weigh it, which to me is exciting. Ooh, it's heavier, I can tell.
It is much heavier.
How much heavier? We're off.
It's 100 pounds heavier. It's 473 for a 78.
That's less than I thought.
So, I mean, engine and trans. Did I just unlock my car?
Yeah, for engine and transmission. It's got a full belly of oil. There's probably oil still in the transmission. The exhaust manifold probably adds
20
maybe
pounds.
25 pounds. And that's not as heavy as I was thinking. 100 pounds from this to this, a 6-speed, from a 4-speed to a 6-speed, 200 horsepower, 90 horsepower. I'm alright with 100 pounds.
Yeah, that's definitely an increase, no matter how you cut it.
Heck yeah, dude. Heck yeah.
Heck yeah.
Oh, man.
Actually, so about the exhaust manifold, you're looking for one still, right?
But in terms of that, also, I'm looking at researching removing the oil cooler or making an oil cooler extension to mount the oil filter here. So on my 1987 Toyota Camry wagon, which actually uses a very similar block, this is where the oil filter is installed, and the manifold swoops to one side so that you can access the oil filter. I'm worried about how we're going to build the manifold to be able to do that. I'm actually going as far as thinking of grabbing an old manifold that I have of an 80s Camry, mounting it on here and seeing if it gives us access and we could use it.
It'd be a power choke, probably.
It would be.
Compared to the factory manifold.
It would be, but hey, maybe I could just use that as a manifold plate to weld off of. Or just really knowing how to route it to build my own manifold just as a mock-up.
Yeah.
My concern with that is that the steering column, because this is a rear-wheel drive application, is going to have to come through this direction. And so if I've got a steering shaft here, then how am I going to make my exhaust dump there at the same time? So
Hood dump.
Things to hood dump.
Hood dump.
No.
Do it. You won't.
No hood dumps. Side exits? Should we just go straight out of the fender?
Yeah, fender exit.
Fender exit. 4 holes.
Right there. So that way it'll turn your Alpine.
P-51 Mustang airplane.
P50.
Yeah, so this is the oil filter location and the oil pan. When I was talking about how fat it is, where this has to hit my subframe, look at it compared to the front of the Sunbeam engine. It's very narrow up by the crankshaft, and there's plenty of room to sneak up on top of that subframe where there's not here.
Skinny boy versus big boy.
And I've looked at 2JZs, and 2JZs have a front sump, mid sump, and a rear sump. And so I'd like to be able to potentially eliminate this whole sump assembly up front. The oil pump exists right here. Where you see this gasket material is the beginning of the bottom of the oil pump going up. And so I'd like to see how shallow I can make the front sump and then extend the oil pickup tube inside underneath to make it a rear sump pump. Poopies? Puppies?
Hey, well, this is a family-friendly channel.
You guys like puppies? Lots of work, though.
Yep. It's the swap life, though, I think. Weighing it reminded me that I did some math just for fun. I figured out that the power to weight on this, once it's done, is going to be about the same as an Evo 10. So, that's pretty significant. That'll be through rear-wheel drive in a tiny, tiny car that's a convertible. So that's pretty potent and should be a lot of fun.
My life is lovely now, I'm focused on me. You said you were about to die, I guess the car is on E. But see, I ain't even tripping, cause I just chose to believe that somebody gon' come around and give me just what I need. I don't wanna see you frowning, see you looking down and out, coming to me crying, saying you miss having me around. Gave you chances and you blew it, you so easily influenced. All the times you told me beat it, now you gotta face the music, I'm saying